Greetings, everyone. I hope you've had a productive week. The purpose of this brief video is really threefold. First of all, I'd like to comment briefly to you about your work on this last week's discussion board assignment, qualitative research specifics. Secondly, I'd like to spend a little bit more time setting up this next week's small group assignment for you. And then finally, I would like to encourage you one more time to continue working on your mock research projects. So, first of all, let me begin by saying that based upon what I've been able to read thus far in your posts and your replies, everyone really did a pretty good job this last week on our assignment on qualitative research specifics. My intent with this assignment was really for you to work to distinguish between qualitative and quantitative methodology studies with respect to sampling, measurement techniques, establishing the trustworthiness of data, and analysis of data. And I believe, based again upon what I've read thus far, everyone has been able to do that. Make sure that you take a look at the general feedback comments I will post in the feedback link in Module 5 a little later this week, as well as any individualized comments in the Grade Center, especially about APA formatting. Again, I've said this before, but we're really, most people are doing a very good job on learning and applying the APA formatting. Got a few little technical kinds of things that we need to clean up in some cases, so please take a look at my individualized comments to you in the Grade Center about the APA formatting. Let me back up just a little bit though and provide a little bit more of an overview on what I'm really talking about by descriptive studies and qualitative technology studies. That will help you as you think through my feedback comments this last week, and also as we kind of look forward to the next week's assignment. Remember that there are really two general types of studies, and I'm referring back to my research typology. You may want to pull that out one more time and take a look at that. But basically the types of studies are experimental and descriptive, and they have different kinds of intents and purposes. Experimental studies, as you well remember, are designed to examine and explore cause and effect relationships between variables. Descriptive studies, on the other hand, are really to describe relationships between variables, and there's a number of ways that we can do that. Within those two general types of studies, though, remember that there are kinds of experimental designs within those types. First of all, if we go back to experimental studies, there are true experimental studies and quasi-experimental studies, and remember the designs associated with those. Basically the difference is that in true experimental studies we randomize subjects to experimental and control groups, whereas in quasi-experimental studies we use existing or intact groups to study, oftentimes classrooms or schools. Okay, within descriptive studies then, we have three different kinds of study design. There's a simple descriptive study, which simply describes some phenomenon that we're exploring. There's a comparative type or kind of study design, which really looks at comparing a couple of different variables and gathering information about those. And then finally there's the correlational study design. And within that particular study design, we do some statistical techniques to compare between groups. We use statistics in this case much like we would in an experimental study. So given those two different types of studies and the kinds of study designs, there's one other factor that we've been exploring, and that is the differences between studies that use quantitative data methodology and studies that use qualitative methodology. Let me make a couple comments that may help you think about that concept. First of all, with respect to experimental types of studies, all experimental studies have to use some kind of quantitative data methodology, and sometimes that can be mixed methodology, as you remember, where you will collect quantitative and qualitative data. But at a very basic floor, if you will, an experimental study has to collect some kind of quantitative data. And basically the reason for that is because the data needs to be analyzed in a statistical fashion to look at cause and effect relationships. Okay, as we think about that quantitative and qualitative kinds of data methodology that can be used, when we think about descriptive studies then, or as Patton calls them, non-experimental studies, in most cases, or for the designs of simple and comparative descriptive studies, we'll generally use qualitative data methodology rather than quantitative, because for the most part in those kinds of studies we're not doing statistical analyses. However, when we look at correlational kinds of study designs or correlational descriptive studies, we do need some kind of quantitative or at least quantitative or mixed methodology that we would use with those studies. Authors oftentimes characterize studies by the kind of data they collect. So oftentimes a quantitative study will be a experimental study type, but also it would be potentially at least a correlational descriptive study. Anytime we're looking at quantitative or qualitative data methodology, however, we are certainly looking at a descriptive kind of study design. Okay, hopefully I've made some written comments about that as well, and my best hope is that as you think about those comments and listen to what I've just said, that will become a little bit more concrete in your mind anyway. Okay, second thing I wanted to do today is to really kind of work with you a little bit more about your group study this next week. As of my last checking, there are still some of you who have not checked in with your groups yet. Please do so as soon as you can. As I've said before, don't be the one that your group is waiting on at this point. People get frustrated with that, so make sure that you check in with your group and participate in this project. For our last small group project, and again, hopefully this is good news to you that this is our last small group project, I've asked you to look at a descriptive study that specifically uses a qualitative data methodology. And so by design, the study you will be looking at will most likely be either a simple descriptive study or a comparative descriptive study. The reason I've asked you to look at a study that uses qualitative technology or data methodology at this point is that I think that by looking at these kinds of studies, specifically with qualitative methodology, that will help us make our distinguishing comments anyway, or distinguish between the experimental studies that we've been looking at this semester and descriptive studies. Make sure you let me know if you run into any difficulty with your group assignment. I have been monitoring your work on the discussion boards thus far. As I've said to you in the past, you're going to use the same Google Doc this time as you did for your last study. Please let me know if you run into any difficulties with the Google Doc or anything else associated with that assignment. Finally, I'd like to just encourage you one last time to keep working on those mock research projects. Remember, those are due on Monday, May the 2nd. Believe it or not, that time is going to be here before we know it. I've been in conversations with many of you over the last couple weeks about your topics and to make sure that we understand the directions for the assignment. Please let me know, contact me if you have any questions or at all about that assignment. One thing that I will clarify for you is that I have changed the instructions just slightly in my instructions for this assignment. In some of my past correspondence, I've suggested to you that the reports should be single-spaced with the double spaces between paragraphs. I've changed that. Let's make them all double-spaced at this point, and hopefully I've gone back and fixed all of my instructions in the appropriate places at this time. But if you run into something that says single-spaced at this point that I've missed, please let me know, because I'd like to know that first of all, and then secondly, you can certainly ignore that. We want it to be double-spaced. Again, let me know if you have any questions or anything I can do to help you with those mock research projects. So, as always, be sure and contact me if I can help you in any way, or again, if you have any questions about anything related to this course. Have a great week, everyone, and take care.